مرحبا، السلام عليكم. نحن الآن في الدرس السابع، درس السابع chapter 7 lesson 7 المفردات. المفردات في هذا الدرس, in this chapter we don't actually have a lot of vocab words. We're talking about a couple of things. We'll be talking a little bit about death and car accidents and hospitals and things of that nature, and a couple of things that have to do with money and the government. And then we have a couple of things that we'll be talking about with regards to school. So let's jump right in. المفردات. Okay, first, أول, أولى. This is something that we've actually seen before, right? We've done أول before, and we used first as an adjective, and we used it also as a superlative. So we said, for instance, أول صف, the first class, right? Now you can use this as an adjective where it's not the first word, it's following the noun, like a noun adjective phrase. And when you do that, it has to match gender. So if here we say البيت الأول, the first house, البيت الأول في الشارع. Okay, أسكن في البيت الأول في الشارع. I live in the first house in the street. So in this case, أول, we use this, it's the masculine. And notice it matches. البيت is معرفة, it has ألف لام. الأول is معرفة, it has ألف لام. Both of them are مذكر, both are masculine. But if I want to talk about something that is مؤنث, it's feminine. البناية, I want to say the first building. So البناية is مؤنث, it's feminine. So the feminine version of أول is أولى. Okay, so it's a different word. We don't add a ta مربوطة. It doesn't function the same way you have other adjectives where you simply put a ta مربوطة on it. So الأولى. So البناية الأولى would be the first building. Okay, preparatory. إعدادي. إعدادي. This is like middle school. When we say المدرسة الإعدادية is like middle school. And remember, we talked about this a couple chapters ago. I think it was في الدرس الرابع. We said الابتدائية. المدرسة الابتدائية, which is elementary school. So now the next one up is الإعدادي. So we have an example here. أختي الصغيرة طالبة في المدرسة الإعدادية. Okay. عندنا الابتدائية والإعدادية, وبعد ذلك الثانوية. الثانوية. أخي طالب في المدرسة الثانوية. So ثانوية coming from اثنين. الثاني, the second. So it's secondary, so high school. So we have الابتدائية, الإعدادية, والثانوية. Okay, الثانوية being high school. مجنون جمع مجانين. Crazy. مجنون جمع مجانين. Remember, anytime we see this جيم here, it means that the word that's after is جمع. It's plural. هو مجنون. هي مجنونة. تاء مربوطة. So if you're talking about a woman, we add تاء مربوطة. هم مجانين. So notice, what kind of plural is this? What kind of plural is this? It's تكسير. It's broken. Right? Because we had to change the letters around. حادث جمع حوادث. Accident. حادث جمع حوادث. So this is another example of جمع التكسير. It's a broken plural. So when we say accidents, حوادث. هو كان في حادث سيارة. في حادث سيارة. A car accident. Okay, so accident of a car accident. That's why accident comes first. He was in a car accident. ماتت. So mat is died, and mat is the masculine, matat is feminine. We're not going to go through all of the conjugations of this verb in past tense, but it is similar to kana. It follows the exact same pattern. So kana, kanat, كانوا, right? ماتوا would mean they died. So it follows the same pattern that the verb kana does, which we've covered a couple chapters ago. Okay, so for right now, we'll just focus on hiya and huwa. Know that if it's for home, you just add the waw alif at the end, matu, right? Like kanu. And then the rest of them we'll come back to. Okay. جدي مات منذ سنتين. جدي مات منذ سنتين. منذ, ما معنى منذ? Remember we did this منذ ago. منذ سنتين. سنة واحدة means 1 year. سنتين, 2 years. So remember we talked about the dual. If you add the ya noon, the ain at the end, it just makes it 2. وجدتي ماتت. جدي مات. جدتي ماتت في حادث سيارة, in a car accident. So she died in a car accident. Now when we're talking about someone who has passed away, you have to say this after it. So we have rahimahullah. So may God rest her soul. This right here is the feminine version because rahim right here, so rahima is to rest or to have mercy upon. And then Allah is the word for God. So God rest her soul, right? This ha is referring to her. And that's just an attached pronoun. So whoever you're talking about, you simply change that attached pronoun, right? So if it was the masculine, you just put hu, rahimahullah, right? So you simply put the attached pronoun. So I gave you the same example here. جدتي ماتت في حادث سيارة rahimahullah. So God rest her soul. If it was masculine, if we were talking about jaddi, rahimahullah. Okay. Now the other thing that you can do is because this right here, rahima is a verb, right? Because you're saying God have mercy on or God rest her soul. So it's a verb there. So because it's a verb, remember when we talked about verbal sentences, we said that we can start a sentence with the verb or you can start a sentence with the subject. It could be either one. So you could flip these two words and we would get Allah yarhamuha. Allah yarhamuha. So this right here is just a past tense version of that verb. This right here is a present tense version of that verb, meaning the same thing, to bless or to rest their soul or to bless their soul, okay, or to have mercy on their soul. So Allah yarhamuha. So the pronoun here just goes at the end of the verb. Allah yarhamuha. Allah yarhamuhu. Okay. Allah yarhamuhum. If you're talking about may God rest their souls, right? Or may God have mercy on their souls. Walidi, Allah yarham. Oh, this should see. Let's fix that. I have a typo here. So let's make it feminine. There we go. Okay. Walidati, Allah yarhamuha, kanat ustada. So my mom, God have mercy on her soul, was a teacher. So anytime you mention someone who's passed away, you always use this phrase after you mention that person. So you can say rahimahullah or you can say Allah yarhamuha. Both of them work. Ammi, Allah yarhamuh, kana muwazzaf fil bank. So my uncle, God rest his soul, was or used to be muwazzaf, an employee in the bank. And so this is a cultural phrase that you use with anyone who's passed away. So if you were to read an obituary, the way that you would know that it's an obituary is because you're going to see this phrase. Muhzin, muhzina. Since we're talking about sad things, saddening or distressing. Okay. So if I say هذا شيء, right here, هذا شيء, this thing, muhzin, this is a sad thing. فعلا, this is a really sad thing or a truly sad thing. هذا شيء محزن فعلا. Now I put a couple of different words here just so that you know that the root of this is huzn, the ha, zayn, noon. Remember we talked about roots and jadar and wazn. So that's the root. It has to do with sadness. Now all of these different versions or the different variations of the word, it just changes the meaning and the function of that word. So muhzin is an adjective. And of course you can add that marbuta if you're talking about something feminine. And it's an adjective that describes an event that's sad. Something that has happened that's saddening. Okay? But if you yourself are sad, then the word that we use is the adjective hazin. So I would say ana hazin, ana hazina for feminine, right? So that's being sad, right? I am sad. If you want to talk about sadness, so when we say the verb ash'ur, ash'ur meaning I have feelings of, right? So we've used this before. Ash'ur بالوحدة, I have feelings of loneliness. أشعر بالتعب, feelings of tiredness. So we use it that same structure. أشعر بالحزن, I have feelings of sadness. So those are the different ways that you can use the word sad. So when we see muhsin, that's the one that's listed in your book, and that's only referring to events or things that have happened that are sad. Okay. هناك هناك means there is or there are. And it can be used in the way that we have in English. There's a store there, there are people there, right? It can also be used as there, just the word there. Someone says, oh, where is that person? You say, hunaka, there. Okay, so it can be used in both those ways. So I have an example. أين الغرفة? Where's the room? hunaka, there. And you can also use it, هناك 4 غرف في بيتي. هناك in the second sentence would be there are. So there are 4 غرف, 4 rooms في بيتي. Okay? So هناك. So there is or there are. There's no changing the word if it's is or are. Okay, you just tell by context. Okay, مستشفى جمع مستشفيات. مستشفيات. مستشفى يعني hospital. Okay? Okay, hospital. في هذه الأيام هناك there is or there are ناس كثيرون, ناس people, كثيرون, a lot. في هذه الأيام هناك ناس كثيرون في المستشفيات. لماذا؟ بسبب كورونا فيروس. صح؟ Okay. So المستشفيات, hospital. So there are a lot of people these days. There are a lot of people in the hospital. Okay. الاقتصاد. Economy or economics. أنا أدرس الاقتصاد في الجامعة. So I study economics. Right? So you can use it as a subject. But you can also use it as referring to the economy. كيف الاقتصاد الأمريكي? How's the American economy? كيف الاقتصاد الأمريكي? جيد؟ ليس جيد؟ كيف؟ الاقتصاد. مال جمع أموال. Mal can mean money, but it's also more of a sense of wealth or property. Okay? Things that you own that have value. And أموال جمع تكسير, it's a broken plural. الخارجية, foreign affairs. It comes from the word خارج. خارج means outside. So خارجية, foreign affairs. وزارة ministry. هو يعمل في وزارة الخارجية الأمريكية. Okay? في وزارة الخارجية الأمريكية. So he works in the ministry. So here we have ministry of, it's إضافة, American Foreign Affairs. Okay? الخارجية. عمة. Okay? This is different than the uncle, right? And amma is without the alif. This is amma with an alif. So it means general or public. So I gave you plenty of examples here that are also listed in your book. المكتبة العامة. So we have المكتبة العامة, the public library. Okay. العمل العام. Oh, this should say, go back. We have a typo here. Just fix it right there. Okay. العمل العام. العمل is work, but you can use it in this context meaning public service. Okay. الإدارة العامة. Remember we did الإدارة, okay? Meaning we covered it in business administration, but here الإدارة العامة would be public administration. Okay? And then I gave another little thing here, note here, which is listed in your book as well under الثقافة. It says الثانوية العامة. So in the culture section it says الثانوية العامة, which refers to, in the Middle East and in some other countries overseas, it refers to the last year of a thanawiya, high school, right? And it's the last year plus the set of cumulative exams that students take. And these are the exams that are cumulative for all the 4 years that they've been in high school. and then there's specific cutoff exam scores that they have to get in order to be able to study certain subjects in college. So if they reach a certain number, they can study medicine. If they reach a certain number, they can study law or engineering or sciences or so on and so forth. Whatever subject there are, there's different scores that you have to get in order to study those things. So it's a very, very stressful time. Culturally, it's a very stressful time for students. Okay, الثانوية العامة. And there is a video, so if you go on the website, there is a video where it says الثقافة, and it's high school kids are talking about الثانوية العامة, what that experience is like in that year. Okay, moving on. أكبر. Akbar, meaning the biggest or oldest. So we have seen this word in a different context, right? We have seen the root of this word in a different context. Kabir, which is the adjective for big. Akbar is the superlative. We call this ism al-tafdeel. There's going to be an entire lesson about ism al-tafdeel, superlative. So akbar is when you take that word kabir, big, and you change it to the biggest or bigger, okay, or the oldest, because kabir can also mean old, right? So akbar, and then here we have written plus ism nakira. So it's always going to be followed by an indefinite noun. And this is similar to when we did the word, what word did we do? Ahsan. Okay? We always did the same thing. Ahsan jami'a fi America. Ahsan jami'a, the best university. Ahsan ra'is, the best president. Ahsan balad, the best country. It's the same exact format. Okay? And that's what we're going to be covering in this chapter. So akbar here, biggest, or it can mean bigger if you put min after it. So I give you two examples. I'll do the second one first. هو أكبر ولد في الصف. هو أكبر ولد في الصف. He's the biggest kid in class, or you could say he's the oldest kid in class, depending on what your context is. Or we can add min after it. أنا أكبر من أخي. أنا أكبر من أخي. Meaning I'm older than my brother. Or we could say هو أكبر مني. He's older than me. So in this case, min is used like than. So now you know min can mean from, and it can also mean than. Okay? So we'll have a whole lesson on this. So this is just an intro to it. Akbar. Okay, يعيش. يعيش, to live. What's the other verb we've done? We've done a verb before that meant to live. What was that verb? Who can remember? يسكن. Good. يسكن. Yaskun means to live physically. Yarish can also mean to live physically, but it can also be metaphysical. So if I'm saying I live happily, right? Or he lived happily ever after. She lived happily ever after. So that's this verb. Okay, so it can have that context as well. هو يعيش في بيت بعيد عن المدينة. He lives in a house بعيد, far from المدينة, the city. Okay, يعيش. So let's do verb conjugation. So I want you to pause the video, and before you even look at the answers, just try to see if you can fill it out yourself. أنا أعيش. So it's a present tense verb. Remember, we changed the prefix. So alif hamza for أنا. أنا أعيش. I live. Going across. نحن نعيش. We live. أنت تعيش with the ta. Anti, you're talking to a woman, تعيشين. Remember, we add ya, noon at the end. Remember, don't forget the noon. أنتم, y'all. أنتم تعيشون, you guys live. Okay, y'all live. هو, الغائب, we're talking about someone else. هو يعيش, he lives. هي تعيش, starting with the ta, she lives. هم يعيشون, they live. So remember, home, we have waw noon at the end. يعيشون. Okay, the last word, which I believe is the last word. Yep. Okay, the last word in the chapter for al-mufradat, sa. Okay, sa. This is a future tense prefix. So future tense is very simple. We don't have to change the verb or anything. All you do is you take fi'l mudara, present tense verb, and you simply tack on a sa in front of that verb. Now it means it's happening in the future. That's it. So if I want to say, I'm going to be traveling, or I will be traveling, okay? then we use here the sa. And all you do is you simply attach it to the beginning. سأسافر إلى كاليفورنيا في الشتاء. Okay? I'm going to travel in the winter. So it's just taking أسافر, I'm traveling, and now it's put it in the future. سنأكل بعد الصف. We are going to eat after class. So notice it just goes on the beginning of that verb. Okay? In English, we always say going to do such and such. In Arabic, we don't have to add this extra word. All we do is we put sa in front of it. Now, when we talk about sa, this is actually considered al-mustaqbal al-qarib. Al-mustaqbal al-qarib. Mustaqbal is future. Al-mustaqbal. Okay? Al-mustaqbal means future. Al-mustaqbal al-qarib is the close future, something that's about to happen soon. So if I'm saying سنأكل بعد الصف, that's about to happen soon. If I say سأسافر في الشتاء, and right now we're في الخريف, so it's pretty close, right? What happens when you want to talk about something that's a little bit farther? This is a word that's not listed in this chapter, but I want you to add it to your notes. This is المستقبل البعيد. المستقبل البعيد is the future that is farther away. Okay? And for the future that's farther away, we're going to use the word سوف. It's not going to be a prefix in that it's not attached to the verb, but it is going to be used right before the verb. And we're still using fi'l mudari. It's still present tense verb. So if I say سوف, oh, found another typo. Okay, there we go. سوف أسافر إلى كاليفورنيا في الصيف. So let's say إحنا الآن في الخريف. We're in الخريف. And we're talking about الصيف, which is next year. So that's farther away, right? سوف أسافر. I will travel. So if it's farther, in the future, we'll use سوف. سوف نتخرج. سوف نتخرج بعد سنتين. So we'll graduate after 2 years. Okay? So think of المستقبل القريب. سوف المستقبل البعيد. So for the future tense that's about to happen, that's closer in the future, versus the future that's farther in the future. Okay, so sa and sofa. So now we can use this with any of the verbs. Any of the verbs that we've done. Okay, let's practice some questions. These are questions that I'd like you to practice. Practice saying them, asking them, and answering them. Okay? ماذا ستعمل هذا الأسبوع? If you're asking a woman, ماذا ستعملين هذا الأسبوع? So now we're using sa and the verb تعمل. So what will you do? Okay? So what are you doing this week? What will you do this week? ماذا ستعمل هذا الأسبوع? Okay? طيب السؤال الثاني بالنسبة لك according to you كيف الاقتصاد الأمريكي؟ بالنسبة لك كيف الاقتصاد الأمريكي؟ Remember بالنسبة لي يعني in my opinion. هل أنت في السنة الأولى في الجامعة؟ في السنة الأولى في الجامعة. So are you, so what is this أولى here? It means first. So are you in the first year? يعني freshman year. Right? First year في الجامعة. السنة الأولى. Okay. هل كنت في المستشفى قبل ذلك? So have you been or were you in a hospital before? المستشفى. هل تعيش أو تعيشين في نفس البيت منذ الطفولة? So are you living in the same house في نفس البيت منذ الطفولة, since childhood? هل عملت is using the verb يعمل, it's just in past tense. So عملت and عملتي, meaning you've done, okay? Or you did. هل عملت أو هل عملتي شيء مجنون في حياتك؟ هل عملت شيء مجنون؟ ما معنى شيء مجنون? Something مجنون, crazy في حياتك. So have you done something crazy in your life? أين المكتبة العامة؟ المكتبة العامة or المكتبة العامة في مدينتك. في أي شارع؟ من هو أكبر شخص في أسرتك؟ من هو أكبر شخص في أسرتك? So who's the oldest or the biggest person in your family? وفي عائلتك, in your family. So أسرة, remember your nuclear family. عائلة, your extended family. So these are just some questions that you can use in practice. I want you to use the vocab and try to put them in as many sentences and questions as you can.